If we're gonna go for the more passive release, there's a couple mechanical pieces that go in. There's really two feels that I'd want you to take here to give you the more passive release. One is gonna be where your trail elbow points, and two is gonna be where your palm points. So the most passive release, think of a player like Victor Hovland. Comedy would be a good example. His club face is more tilted down sooner, very passive through the hip. Passive would be defined by the trail elbow staying pointed towards me or towards my stomach as I turn during the downswing through the hip, and my palm staying away from me or away from my stomach through the hip. So it's elbow towards me, palm away. That would be the passive style. Ultimately, when we all go play, we want to feel good, right? I want to reduce the stress I have when I go play and increase my focus. And that's exactly what Canopy can help you do. If you're like most golfers I work with, it's really hard to go a full 5-6 hours in the course or even a 1-hour practice session swinging the club and not feeling some aches and pains. The tincture is one of the 3 options that they have that I absolutely love. Super easy, you can just have this right in your golf bag. Consistent use will help you relax, increase focus and cognition, and alleviate aches and pains. It comes in 5 amazing flavors: Skittles, Choco Mint, Peppermint, Lemon Lime, Cinnamon, and Unflavored. Listen, if you haven't used CBD before, or you're skeptical, you're not sure, I get it, I was as well. But this thing is completely safe. It's precision dosed, third-party tested, and it tastes really good. If you're interested in Canopy and you want to purchase some, down below, see the link in the description and use code Cogorno20 for 20% off. All right guys, in today's video, we're gonna talk about right arm release styles in detail. There's 2 different release styles we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna give you some feels you can use with your trail arm through impact to help your ball striking get more consistent. Now, when we talk about release styles, typically they're gonna be in one of 2 categories. You're either gonna have a more passive release style or a more active release style. When we look at a more passive release style, that would be defined by the club face not having as much rotation through the impact zone, let's say from like hip high to hip high. And then a more active, right, a more active release pattern would have the club face having more rotation through the impact zone. So passive, not as much face rotation; active, more face rotation. Now, typically speaking, what we're all searching for is a more passive release pattern. The best players will get the club face more square earlier. They'll do more of the squaring of the club face earlier, sooner in the swing, so they can be more passive through the hit. Typically, higher handicaps or someone who's more inconsistent won't have the club face as square as early and will need to do more of the squaring later. Think about it this way. Let's say we all need to square the club face 100%. You've got this like pie chart, 100%. What you want to do is do like 60, 70, 80, 90% of that 100% early in the downswing so that it can be more passive. But what if you only did 20% of it? 30, 40%, you have a lot more to do through the hitting zone. Either one of them can work, both of those can get to 100, it's more how you want to do it. Which brings us to our next point, which is the club face is the piece that's going to dictate which release pattern you have. The simple version is the more square or close the club face is into the hitting area, the more passive you can be. If you don't open the door as much on the way back, right, you don't have to close it as much on the way down. But contrary to that, if the club face is more open coming down, you're going to need to have a more active release pattern or learn how to square it earlier. So if we're going to go for the more passive release, there's a couple mechanical pieces that go in. There's really 2 feels that I'd want you to take here to give you the more passive release. One is going to be where your trail elbow points, and 2 is going to be where your palm points. So the most passive release, think of a player like Victor Hovland. Comedy would be a good example. His club face is more tilted down sooner, very passive through the hip. Passive would be defined by the trail elbow staying pointed towards me or towards my stomach as I turn during the downswing through the hip, and my palm staying away from me or away from my stomach through the hip. So it's elbow towards me, palm away. That would be the passive style. Now the opposite of that would be true for the active style. If I've got a more open club face and I don't want to close that earlier for whatever reason, instead of having my elbow stay towards me, the elbow would start to point back towards the camera behind. And instead of the palm staying away from me, the palm would start to point towards me. Now a big issue with that, you could probably see there with my release pattern, is where the shaft is at impact. So by having a passive release, elbow towards me, palm away, you notice how that's very easy to get shaft lean at impact, get the handle forward. That's gonna make hitting the ball solid easier, okay? Now if I do the active way, where the elbow goes behind me and the palm goes towards me, we can see that that's gonna help assist squaring the club face up, but it compromises the shaft lean. So notice here, if my face is open, pointed away from me, I can have my elbow go behind me, palm towards me, and it points the face more to the left, but look at my shaft lean at impact. It's non-existent, right? My handle's too far back. So the issue with that is I'm also gonna struggle with contact from there and be more inconsistent with my club face control. So I would not recommend that style. Now, you can make it work, right? There's some players like a Phil Mickelson, a Vijay Singh, a Louis Oosthuizen, who have a bit more of this active look through impact. Requires more practice, more timing, maybe a little bit more eye-hand coordination for that. So let's say we wanted to go with the more passive style. Elbow towards us, palm stays away. Again, the prerequisite is that the club face has got to be tilted down some. And that would be defined by, or where you would check that, is when the club's last parallel to the ground, you notice the toes in front of the heel. If this is straight toe up, like this, 90 degrees, typically 15 to 25 degrees tilted down. Okay, we have to have this to be able to be passive. Now, how you get that club face like that is either by having a grip that's turned strong enough, okay, so turned clockwise enough, or if you've got a neutral or weaker grip, you need to have more bow or flex in that lead wrist. You can either have a stronger grip, then you don't need to have the wrist as good, you can still have it tilted down. It's option A. Option B is if you have a neutral or weaker grip, to get that face tilted down, you have to have more bow, okay, in the wrist at that particular point. So whichever one of those two options, the face is tilted down, and through the hit, we're gonna feel those two pieces, the elbow towards me and the palm away. Now my belt buckle, my belly button, my rib cage are constantly turning with this style of release. Okay, so for me to be passive, I gotta keep that motion going. So what I like to do to start is I've got an 8-iron, little kind of half 3/4 swings, and feel and make sure that that club face is tilted down, again, either grip or wrist. And once I'm in my delivery position here, elbow towards me, palm away, keep that belly button moving constantly towards the target. Face tilted down, elbow towards me, palm away. And that's gonna be very, very passive through my release. Now, the more passive I am, the more my elbow's towards me, the more the palm stays away, that's gonna reduce the amount the face, the club face, closes to the path through the hit. Okay, that's gonna reduce the amount the face closes to the path. So if I don't have my club face tilted down enough and square enough already, where's the ball gonna wanna go? More to the right. Okay, so the more passive I am, less draw, more fade relative to your current pattern. So if you have a hook or a pull hook, you would very likely want to do more of this through the hit. So face is tilted down, elbow towards me, palm away, belly button's in constant motion, elbow towards me, palm away. And that's going to be very, very passive. That's probably like a 2-yard fade for me there compared to normal. Now, if you have the face that's more open, right, maybe you're a higher handicap player, you need to learn how to close the club face. Okay, that part's non-negotiable. The negotiable part is how. In theory, on paper, get it square earlier, be more passive, more consistent. But if you're not able to get it square earlier for whatever reason, or hey, you want to have a more active release, that's fine. Typically the higher handicap, someone who's trying to break 100, break 90, I'd rather you be a little bit more active and actually get the face close to path, actually hit a draw, get rid of your slices, and then over time, learn how to square it earlier, you could take some of that away. Now, if you are gonna be a little bit more passive, I would still keep the elbow towards you piece, because that's gonna help you get the handle forward. I would get more active with the pronation, which is the right forearm piece. So Instead of the palm staying away and the elbow towards me, okay, this is very passive, elbow towards me, palm away. A bit more active to start with would be keep the elbow towards me, but instead of having the palm face away, allow that to have a little bit more rotation. So a little bit more counterclockwise motion. I'm feeling my thumb kind of get up and to the left, my palm point down and to the right. Now, what's that gonna do? Well, if passive made the face not close as much to the path, active is gonna increase the face closing to the path. That would have the ball starting more left and or curving more left. It would also lower the dynamic loft a little bit. So if you have a more open face, more toe up, you're gonna want a little bit more of that pronation. So I would start with elbow towards me still, but now a little bit more active with that right palm. So a little bit more pronation. I would expect this to curve more to the left, all things equal. Yeah, and that's probably maybe a 10-yard draw. Okay, so my passive release was like a 2-yard fade. My active release was a 10-yard draw. Again, assuming everything else in my swing stays the same. What I would recommend for you is work towards getting the club face closed sooner. Of that 100% of squaring you have to do, try and get more of that done earlier. That starts with your setup, right? That starts with having a grip that's neutral enough. That would be during the backswing, keeping the club face neutral, but especially in early downswing, have that face more square sooner. That's gonna allow you to be more passive. If you're a higher handicap and you're hitting to the right, struggling hitting to the right, try and get the face square earlier, but if you're not able to for whatever reason, add that right arm pronation in, still keep the elbow towards you. Only as last resort would I allow the elbow to start to go back as well. Again, because that's gonna compromise some of your contact. But if we wanna be more passive, 1 or 2 more here, elbow towards me, palm stays away, trail shoulder's gonna stay lower into the follow through. So just some little feels here with that. Elbow towards me, palm away. I keep turning. Trail shoulder stays down. That's about as good and as straight as I can hit it. So my normal, pattern is probably like a 5-yard draw. So when I get more passive, it just takes that little curve off. So that's what I'm feeling. Elbow towards me, palm away, stomach keeps turning. My shoulder feels like it stays down, right shoulder lower as I do that. Elbow towards me, palm away, shoulder stays down. Yeah, and that's very passive through the hit. So passive versus active, again, if you're a little bit more on that pull hook side, you want to take some of the draw off, you definitely want to go more towards passive. Higher handicap if you're struggling to the right, consider closing the club face sooner. If not, get a little bit more active with that trail arm. Those are the options. If you guys have any questions about how the trail arm works, we're going to link a video. We've got a ton of trail arm videos, but also feel free to leave a comment or a question down below. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Thank you guys for watching.